Välkommen till Livsenergis intervjukanal. Här träffar vi författare till böcker som vi ger ut i bokklubben. I den här intervjun kommer du få träffa Cate Stillman, som är ayurvedisk hälsospecialist, yogamentor, entreprenör och författare till boken Hälsomanifestet. Cate är ett friskt exempel på hur man kan vända ett normliv till det liv man verkligen vill leva. Det är en modig kvinna som vågar gå sin egen väg. Med en stark passion för det hon gör lever hon sitt drömliv, vilket är att hjälpa människor att se och förstå den naturliga livsrytmen och hur bra våra kroppar och sinnen kan må i enlighet med den. I Hälsomanifestet ger hon oss verktygen till att hitta vår egen livsrytm och skapa oss en hälsosam, harmonisk och balanserad vardag. Med en djup kunskap i ayurveda och yoga översätter hon en uråldrig visdom för att passa oss idag. Hennes motto i livet är att sträva efter att blomstra. Och om man vaket lever efter det så är det en skön inställning till livet, som både är uppmuntrande och tillåtande. Under intervjun refererar Cate ett par gånger till Body Thrive. Det kan vara bra att veta att hon då menar den engelska versionen av Hälsomanifestet. Hi Cate!
Hello, Alexandra.
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to talk about Body Thrive in Swedish.
Oh, I am too. It looks like you are in a warm country and it looks really nice. You know, it's been snowing here today. Where are you?
I'm in Punta Mita, Mexico, where we live part-time. We also live in Wyoming, which is part of the Rocky Mountains we're right on the border of Idaho. There's the big Tetons right there. So we like to ski and we like to surf, and I've designed my life, and my family's designed our lives to be a little bit more location flexible, bicultural. And it's a lot of what happens with Body Thrive is you start to have a lot more resilience and adaptability and much more alignment to what you want to do and how you want to live. And so it starts to lead you to do what might be outside of the box of what most people are doing, but it's in alignment with who you are and how you want to live. So I take it upon myself to lead the way and have time at the surf break.
Wow, it sounds like a really nice thing to do, to live in the best part of two worlds.
Yeah, we love it. I mean, and it's, I think some of the benefits for it from me is, one is it gets my own family back in rhythm when we're a bit outside of the societal structure and the school structure. Indy has a lot more, she's my 12-year-old, intergenerational relationships are very strong in her life. Being bicultural and bilingual is another thing that I wanted her to have. I wanted her to grow up with that being normal and not something that you did later in life, when it's harder, because children are, before the age of 7, you have plasticity. You have so much plasticity, neuroplasticity, plasticity of mind, and a plasticity with language and culture. So she just was acculturated before she was rational. Rationality comes in around age 7 is where logic and reason come in. So
exactly, that's when we start having problems with things, right? So Cate, I'm going to quickly introduce you. This is Cate Stillman. She is the author of Hälsomanifestet, the Swedish version of the Body Thrive book. This is your first book, right?
Yeah, this was my first book. I self-published it, or independently published, in 2015, and it came out of a desire from my global community at Yoga Healer to basically live these habits of yogis. It's something that I had been teaching since 2000 in San Francisco, and I was a yoga teacher and an Ayurvedic practitioner, and I found that there was just a really easy way to understand the way that Ayurveda could help people the most. And for those who don't know what Ayurveda is, Ayu means life, and Veda means to know or to study. And so if we study life, and if we study ourselves as part of life, and we study the cosmos as part of life, and we study our families, and we study our ecosystems, this is all what is under Ayurveda. And it's really coming from experiential knowledge. Like the more that you think about, like, what did I learn yesterday? And am I applying that today? The more you do that, the more you understand life. The more you look at, what did I learn yesterday? And I'm going to disregard it today. The more you end up getting yourself in trouble. So the yogis, which is the path of enlightenment, like yoga and Ayurveda were never really separated. So again, Ayurveda is studying life, and yoga is studying enlightenment. Like, how do you live your life awake to your full potentiality, to your full capacity as a human being, and to your dharma, to your life purpose? All of that is the path of yoga. Ayurveda sets you up to be able to go on that path. Now, right now in modern society, people first of all, right now they're scared. They're also exhausted. And many of them are sedentary, which is funny, right? So they're mentally exhausted and physically more stagnant. That, if we look at our global population, is the trend right now. So when we look at what do we need to do to be able to like live our life on charge, live our life awake? Well, we need to know our body better. We need to live our habits better. And that's really where Ayurveda is so strong, is it's the habits of yogis. It's the day-to-day wellness system of yogis is what Ayurveda is. And it's old. It's 4,000 years old plus. It's the oldest holistic wellness system, and it's largely based on prevention, but it's also curative. So that's really, from my perspective, I had to create the course of, here's the habits of yogis, here's how you adapt your habits that are counterculture, that are totally radical and rebellious right now, to feel how you want to feel in your body. And from the course came the book, and then from the book came a desire from a publisher to get the book, and then they sold foreign rights, which is where it came to you, Alexandra. And I'm so excited because now it's in Swedish.
Yeah, it's really nice. We're so looking forward to share this with a wide audience here in Sweden. So if we talk a little bit about the book, to me, it's not a book about Ayurveda. It's more a book of a lifestyle, of how you can actually use habits that are easy to use. They're quite logical if you just, read them, and you are so good at explaining them and giving opportunities to everyone who, some people don't even like habits. We can talk about that in a little bit.
Yeah, sure.
So this book is more of a lifestyle book for me. It's, a help for a daily routine. What would you say? Who is this book for?
If you have a body and you want to thrive.
Of course, you want to thrive. Thrive.
Yeah. So many people read this book and they're like, this would have been really helpful growing up. Or this would have been really helpful as a teenager. Or, oh, this would have been really helpful as a young adult. Or, I wish I had been raised with these habits. And so, within that, and that's usually what people notice when they start to learn Ayurveda, because it's just studying your own mind, it's studying your own soul, it's studying your own body, from a way that gives you language in order to understand more about who you are. And the more you know yourself, the more power you have. And we want that power. We want the power to have the kind of immune system we want to have. We want the kind of power to have this sort of energy we want to have. We want the power to be able to control our digestion, or to be able to work with what the yogis would say is work with the Shakti, work with the creative energy, so that you're able to digest and create energy and tissue in the way that feels the best to you. We all want those powers. And to me, in Body Thrive, all I did was distill hey, there's habits. They're the fastest path to those powers.
When you talk about it, it feels like what you're trying to tell us is actually get to know your natural rhythms, get to know your ecosystem, and get those to play with each other, and your life will kind of, flow.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So who we are as human beings is we're part of something greater, right? We're part of this evolving planet. We're part of this evolving cosmos, evolving universe, evolving universes, the multiplex, the multiverse, right? Like it's big. It's really freaking big and it's old, right? So right now we're 13.7 billion years old as consciousness. That's way older than my 47 years. So what I inherited 47 years ago was a body. And this body was evolved on a planet, and the planet has these forces and it has these rhythms. And now one of the most basic rhythms that we all are familiar with is that the sun rises and the sun sets.
Yeah.
And that happens because the earth spins. We're also familiar with the seasonal rhythms that right now it's cold, later it'll be warm, or when you're listening to this later, maybe it's warm, and in 6 months it's going to be cold. And that's because the earth is rotating around the sun. We know these things, but do we seat our awareness in these rhythms? So the bigger your perspective is in terms of time and in terms of space, the more you notice rhythm. Yeah. You notice the universal rhythms. Now, these universal rhythms there's laws that the human body has evolved with. And so when we look at our day to day, our 24 hours in a day and our 4 seasons in a year, there's a lot of laws that are built into that. Now, all we're doing in these habits in Body Thrive is we're saying like, okay, I get that the universe is bigger than me. Let me line up. Let me fall into the bigger rhythm. Because if I fall into the bigger rhythm, I'm going to be healthier. If I go against the bigger rhythm, I can't take it on. It's going to destroy me. And when we look at what's going on today, people are destroying their immune systems. We're seeing it everywhere. Autoimmune diseases are on the rise. They're differentiated. Allergies are on the rise. Food allergies are on the rise. We've got coronavirus, right? And it's like, it all comes down to like, what's the health of your immune system? Like, are you resilient and are you adaptable? Now, the more you're going against the circadian rhythms, which is simply the day-night cycle, the more you're living against those rhythms because you're staying up too late, you're eating dinner too late, you're eating food throughout the day and not letting your digestive tract rest, you're stressed out at night before you go to bed. All of those habits are against the flow of nature.
Can you give us, a short description of the circadian rhythm?
Yeah. So it's basically just that. Like the sun rises in the morning, it gets, the temperature warms up during the day, it sets in the evening, and then you go through the night cycle. And in Ayurveda, we bring a lot of language to this. And we look at these different energies. We give them names, the names of the forces. So Vata is the force that happens before the sun rises, and it happens before the sun sets. It's the energy of the wind. It's the energy of change in terms of movement, of things moving from gross to subtle. So energy becomes more and more subtle, or it's the movement from subtle to gross. So for anyone who's an early riser and you would never miss a dawn, you would never miss the dawn because you know that the energies are the most subtle then, that the connection between the physical realm and the spirit realm are the most transparent. So this is all part of the circadian rhythm. If we wake up early, we witness much more of ourselves as not physical matter. So we have a lot more neuroplasticity in that time of day. We're able to change things that we want to change in our lives faster, but we're also able to relax into the expansion of the universe. And just relaxing into that, it helps ourselves expand. It helps us grow into who we want to become.
Is a good thing to do in the morning.
Yeah. And honestly, for most people, just simply going to bed early enough to be awake then, and then just notice what you want to do. And for some people, it's going to be contemplation. For some people, it's going to be meditation. Other people, prayer. Other people, stretching. Other people, writing. And I've learned over time to not worry about what you do then, but just to be awake then is the most important thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, because otherwise it's like if you can't get excited to wake up and meditate, you're not going to go to bed early. So forget that. But the more you're going to bed earlier and you're waking up, your life is going to get so much more aligned because now you're aligned to the rhythm. So what'll happen eventually is you'll notice like, I just want to sit and be in the big peace right now because this is the most peaceful time of the day, and I just want to plug in
When
and
do you
enjoy
wake up
it.
in the morning?
It's variable for me. So right now, like I'm in a bit of a healing period. So I'm using some of the energy of what happens after the dawn is kapha energy. And that's the energy of earth and water. It's dense and it's heavy and it's building. And so anyone who's in a period of recovery or rehabilitation, you might actually sleep in later than you normally would. So because I just had surgery, I'm a bit in that mode. But normally I wake up between 5:30 and 6:15, somewhere in there. Normally I go to bed by 9:30, lights out, done. So somewhere in there. Yeah. So then the energy that's in the early morning, that's the time to go hike a mountain. That's the time to like tackle the big project, clean the garage on the weekend. Like you never want to put off that physical, a lot of things to do. I had a team meeting this morning where I had to like really reorganize the team and get a whole bunch of people to change the way they thought. That's not a good afternoon thing, because by afternoon, the sun's winding down. This was like a get up and go and take charge energy. Like we need to change things now. This is like the commander with the troops. Like this is the battle. Like we're going to go do this. That's a good morning activity. You don't want to have that activity before you go to bed. It doesn't work. And this is really where the habits help you line up. So you wake up early, you hydrate, you eliminate, you have a complete bowel movement in the morning, and then you do open your breath body, get in your physical body before you move on with your day, before you start talking with people and eating things. And this is really big. Just when people start to do that, they have a big change. Now, Body Thrive starts with the circadian rhythm of like what actually happens the night before. And the reason I did it this way is I noticed that like when we're reading something, we're like, oh, we'll start that tomorrow. But I wanted everybody to start today. Let's start now. Your life is happening in the now. It's not happening in the future. And so looking ahead at the day, habit 1 in Body Thrive is earlier, lighter dinner. Why? Because it helps you start the day right. It helps you wake up earlier the next day. The later you eat dinner, the later you go to bed. The more difficult it is to digest your food. So we start with habit 1, earlier, later dinner. We go to habit 2, early to bed. This is because the sun is when the sun starts to set, and you guys are far enough north to know that there's a massive variability annually. So in general in Sweden, you're going to be much more out and about in the summer. You're going to sleep less in the summer, and you're going to sleep more in the winter. And that's not a problem. Your bodies were designed to do that, especially if you've been living, if your like ancestors go back, 5 generations living in Sweden, which I know for many of you, they do. That's just how it goes. So in the winter, you're catching up annually on your sleep. But if we look at the circadian rhythm in terms of the day cycle, the earlier you go to bed, the more descending energy, this heavy kapha energy, is also when the sun is setting. And so after the sun is set to when you go to bed, that heavy energy that makes you just want to like curl up around the fire and read a book or talk with your kids and find out how their day went or play games. It's this connective energy of how water works. Like if you put a bunch of if you see rain on a window pane, the droplets start to form, they connect, and they start to form bigger droplets, which eventually is heavy enough to create a little river, a little stream. And then you'll notice at the bottom of the window, there's like 2 or 3 streams, but at the top, there's all these little drops. So that's the energy of water. It wants to connect. But right now what's happening is so many people are overwhelmed, right? They're answering 20 emails after work, and they're trying to get all their things done before they go to bed. So they're in a very different energy than relax and connect. And then we have issues with sleeping deeply. We have issues with waking up in the middle of the night. All of those things that really get in the way of having enough energy tomorrow.
So we know too little about those rhythms, and that's probably why we are not feeling in our optimal state.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and what I find from having coached so many people into these habits over, I mean, it's a long time now. I mean, I'm going on like 20 years. So I have some data, and it's amazing. I mean, when people just start to sync up, especially with a habit that's, there's the habits that are the easiest, and then there's the habits that are really getting in the way the most. So we didn't talk about food now. The human digestive tract is meant to rest and digest. So between meals, when we're not eating and we're not stimulating our blood sugar by snacking, what happens is we go much more into deeper thinking. We go into states of focus. Now, focus is a big issue now, and it's an issue for our kids, but it's also an issue for adults.
Yeah.
And this, when we start to see like, oh, biggest meal in the middle of the day, and that's one of these habits, is like to actually sit and eat, and then to not snack, and then to have dinner be a little lighter. Why? So you can go to bed early enough to get a good deep night's sleep. When people start to do that, they start to notice that their ability to concentrate in the afternoon is so much greater. So at a time when some people are like reaching for the coffee or the cookies or the Coca-Cola or whatever, and that's bumping their blood sugar up and down. If they can just have a decent lunch, if they want a little sugar after lunch, great, have a little dessert, and then allow a fasting time. Let that digestion time. And when you do that, the mind gets fed and the mind can focus. And when we have that going on, like the rest of life seems to, like, we're actually able to think about what's most important and start to parcel out the stuff that's really not as important.
What do you say about breakfast then?
Yeah, so breakfast is, I mean, literally, it's breaking the fast. So we need a long enough fast between the last meal of the day and the first meal of the day to qualify, right? So the time frame in there is usually like a minimum of 14 hours, especially for people with lighter constitutions who might be fast burners. 14 hours is a good fast time. Medium burners, 16 hours is good. And then people that are more slow burners, people that have more kapha, more density to their constitution. And these people usually love to eat, but don't actually have a strong appetite and tend to gain weight very, very easily. For them, it can even be up to 18 hours of fast time and only a 6-hour feeding window or nourishment window.
If you have a teenager who's not into eating breakfast, that shouldn't be a problem then, as long as he or she eats a good lunch and a light dinner.
It would all depend on their focus. So if they were having problems with focus or hitting their own personal goals, then I would really look at breakfast. And this is the thing. Our bodies are meant to burn fuel during the day, not burn fuel during the night. And so if a teenager, like, it's a very modern habit right now to just have coffee for breakfast and then to eat the majority of the calories when you relax at the end of the day. Like, oh, I'm relaxed now, I'm going to really eat. That our bodies aren't designed to do that. And if you think about it, like, we've had electricity now for
a lot of years.
If we go and like how many, and think of like how many generations in your family line. Like, were my grandparents born with electricity running in their house? My great-grandparents born with electricity? Of my great-great-grandparents? Most of you, by the time you get to great-great, you're going to be like, no way. And some of you at the point of grandparents are like, nope. And when you look at this, and then you think of like, how long is your ancestral line? If you were to draw a family tree back 5,000 years, and now you start to look at just a 5,000 year, let alone a 30,000 year horizon, and you see like, oh, it's been 100 years. This is kind of new. It's kind of new that we could see at night.
Yeah. And cook.
But the problem is our digestion doesn't change in 100 years. Our physiology doesn't change. And so we stress our systems out. Why? Because we're able to see at night now. Humans love to see what they're eating.
Yes.
Right? Like, have you ever had one of those candlelit dinners where you're like, could barely see your food and it was like gorgeous food, but you couldn't really see it? Or camping. This is another one. Like, you're camping or you're backpacking and you get to the place and there's not enough daylight and you're eating in the dark and you can't really see, but maybe you have a headlight, but it's like the pleasure goes way down if you cannot see your food. So humans are designed to see their food. We're designed to eat when the sun's higher in the sky. We're designed to digest when there's daylight hours left. And we all know what it feels like to go to bed with too much food in our bellies.
Not good. But do you have any like good tips for sugar obsession?
Yeah. So sugar obsession, and it can come in many forms. Like, it can come in alcohol, right? Or adding milk and sugar to our coffee. And to me, sugar, it can be eating between meals, even if we're eating chocolate is mostly fat, like chocolate. Those of you who are the 90% dark chocolate eaters, I am too. Love this stuff. But have it with meals, and then let there be space.
Okay.
Now, space is one of the 5 elements, and it's really the most important element, because without space, nothing can move. Right? Just like, think about that for a minute. Think of a traffic jam. There's not enough space to move. And when there's a traffic jam, things start to get backed up and backed up and backed up.
You want me to think about my stomach now?
And now I want you to think about your stomach. So when there's enough space for things to move and to flow, we're now in flow, and our minds in flow, and our bodies in flow. So a sugar addiction, and it's so much more than that. I would put like all of snacking, even if we're snacking on almonds and dark chocolate, and you're like, it's not sugar, but it's increasing your blood sugar. So I would say it's a blood sugar addiction. Mm-hmm. And so I'm much less worried about how much sugar you're eating. Because if you were to only eat 2 or 3 times a day and not snack in between, you wouldn't crave sugar as much. Yeah. You'd be like, I want real food. Mm. And this is what's so cool. And it just happened. This is part of like when we fall into rhythm, we don't have to deal with trying to willpower over saying no to a cookie. The cookie stops mattering because you've had a good lunch. If you want a cookie, great, have a cookie. But then let your digestion rest for 5 or 6 hours. And then you can think.
Yeah. Because it's really nice to have a cookie or a piece of chocolate. I am right now in the middle of a period where I can't tell myself not to eat those chocolates.
And I don't think you should. I don't think that's the way to deeper nourishment. I think the way to deeper nourishment is when we can really relax and be excited about the day ahead, where we're deeply resilient, where our immune system is strong, where we're deeply energized, meaning we actually have very, very deep energy to go a very long time without food if we were to choose. And to focus on doing what is so much more important in our lives than trying to stay away from chocolate and sugar.
That's very true. I'll take you up on that one. So the book is built on habits. Can we just touch on habits for a short while? Because I think it's quite an interesting subject. Some people love habits and routines, and some people reject them heavily. What can you say about habits?
Yeah. So, I mean, whether you love them or reject them, we're all a pile of habits at the end of the day. Like your habits determine when you like, and you guys can write this down that are listening, like write down and see if you agree with this statement. My habits determine my personality. Ooh. Right? Would you say I believe that? Would you say I have to think about it?
I think I have to think about it.
Yeah. And think about it, because if you had the habit, like I have a habit of surfing. So is surfing part of my personality? Has anyone ever hung out, if you're listening, think like if you hung out with surfers, like we have a personality, like usually there's a thing. Runners, if you run every day, you're a runner. Runners also have a bit of a personality. Early risers, if you're an early riser, if you have the habit of rising early, there's a bit of personality with that.
But you could have
night owls. If you go to bed late every night and you meet other people that are night owls, like there's a little bit of like, there's some overlap in some part of the personality that goes with that habit. Yeah, go ahead.
You have this, but many times you have several habits that maybe are, determining your personality then.
Exactly. So you're a sum of all of those, how all of those habits make up your personality. That's who you are. I have a habit of interrupting people. Now, interruption is a very rude habit in many cultures. Mm-hmm. In like entrepreneurship culture, it's a little less rude. It's a little bit more normal there because if you allow other people to interrupt you, it's all seen as like there's just something important going on. Mm-hmm. But in a lot of cultures, that's a rude habit. So my personality in those cultures would come off as rude. Yeah. Right. So it's, we're a million habits. We have so many habits, and all that we're learning from behavioral science right now. And some of the best design schools have focused on behavioral science. There's this really fascinating overlap between how we design what we're creating, whether it's a couch or a shirt or a coffee maker or whatever, and with our habits. So there's great work being done particularly at Stanford and Berkeley in behavioral science and design. And what we're finding from some of this research is that the more we can architect our environment to support the habits that we want to have, the easier it is to have those habits. So if we architect our bedroom to help us go to bed early, if we architect our refrigerator to help us eat more fruits and vegetables, if we architect our calendar to give us the kind of space we need to transition between activities, now we're able to control our experiences. And we're actually able to shape shift our personality, which in Body Thrive culture, yoga healer culture, we call identity evolution, where we're able to evolve who we are.
Nice. Habits can be, I mean, listening to you and looking at the book, those habits are good habits. Many of our personality habits are not so good. And many of us would probably not even think about them as habits because we don't want to be identified.
Yeah, what's an example you're thinking of? Let's go.
Well, my habits of eating chocolate in the afternoon, I'm embarrassed every afternoon with my colleagues around me because I go to that chocolate box and eat those chocolates every day. And
so what if you were to eat them after lunch?
Yeah, I'll start doing that. I will. But so that's one thing. But other things could be, you sleep too late, perhaps.
Yeah.
You sleep in, and you are always late for meetings, or always late to school, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about being behind.
Yeah.
Or being late, because it's it's a similar personality. So those of you out there who are chronically late or chronically like running behind, or feeling like you're behind, is another part of this habit pattern. It's another part of this personality where you always feel like you're behind the group, or you always feel like you're behind where you should be. Now, if we look at that in terms of resilience and adaptability, if you always feel like that, it's actually equivalent to not feeling like you're enough, or not feeling like you're in the right place at the right time all the time. So it's orientation towards stress. In Body Thrive, it's habit number 10 is easeful living, where you start to orient towards ease. And part of ease is being in yourself, like being deeply seated in now and in yourself. And then part of how we can architect our life to that is like, what's really most important? If it's important for you to be at a meeting on time, or at a date with your partner on time, or picking up your child from school on time, if that's important, then you have to align your life to do that. And if you don't, you have to start equating with every time you do that, you're violating yourself first and foremost. And then all of the excuses, there was traffic, I got busy, this meeting went over, blah, blah, blah. You have to start seeing those excuses for exactly what they are, which is your decision not to do what you said you were going to do originally. And this is where it really starts, like the stuff we started talking about in the beginning about like, how do you live a life of much, much greater purpose? We use Body Thrive as our first playground. I'm like, let's learn all this stuff in Body Thrive, because then when we go into the next part of the next book, Master of You, or the next curriculum, which goes with Master of You, called Awake Living, when we go into that, it's like, how do you make bigger things happen in your life? Now, you cannot make bigger things happen in your life if you're violating yourself consistently throughout the day.
You have to start seeing that.
Yeah. And that's where the path of yoga is so helpful. And that's why this came from yogis, is they're like, first be aware of what you want, be aware of who you are, and line up who you are with where you want to go. And ruthlessly, even if it goes against culture, even if everyone else is going to dinner late and having drinks and all that, you're like, you know what, how do I want to feel tomorrow? What do I need to do today to feel that way tomorrow? And it does. And we have a lot of people in Body Thrive. This is funny, Alexandra. I haven't told people like I have a sobering effect on people. Because a lot of people come in and they have these habits and And soon after being in the course that goes with the book, they realize like, I don't want to drink this much alcohol. Like, I don't want to drink wine every night, or I don't want to drink this much coffee, or I don't really need to be eating this much chocolate right now, or I need more time to take walks, or I need more time just to sit and think before I put things on my calendar. And that process, that is changing your personality. Now you're becoming someone who has time to sit and think. Or now you're becoming someone who is on time to the things that they say they're going to do because they don't want to violate themselves.
And the 10 lifestyle habits of Body Thrive or Hälsomanifestet can do that for you, can help you get on that path.
Exactly. And that's exactly what it's designed for. And it starts with habit 1. I mean, and that's the thing, is this is like a domino effect, right? Where you start doing habit 1, it tips over the domino of habit 2. You eat early enough, you're going to get tired. Yeah. You get tired early enough, you're going to wake up early. You wake up early enough, you're going to be inspired. Because dawn is inspiring. Think of like any movie you've ever watched that was trying to have like an inspirational moment. And they're like, the sun is rising. You have a new day. You can make a new start. Like, the sun is rising. That's inspirational. So part of inspiration is breath body practices, that we actually want to bring more life force, bring more breath into our body before we go on to, and this is what happens with these habits, is they just start to tip each other over. And soon we're like, oh, most of the time, not all the time, because we don't care about perfect. Most of the time I'm doing most of these things, and boy, I'm resilient and I'm adaptable. I'm happier. I have more energy. I'm better rested. I'm a better parent. I'm a better boss. I'm a better blah, blah, blah.
I think that you are very generous. I think that you are generous in the way you look at, the differences in the different persons that will read this book, that listen to you. You take into consideration that we're different. You are stating all these habits that sound quite logical and easy, but reading into them, they get deep, they get very informative, and you consider all the different situations that a person can actually deal with in their family, in their setting, in their lives, and so on. So thank you for that. You're generous.
Well, I was raised, I'm rebellious by nature, and I was raised in Ayurveda when I became a practitioner. So in my 20s and 30s, in a very different way of learning, which was, these habits are called dinacharya from Ayurveda. So in my training as an Ayurvedic practitioner and as a yoga teacher, it was like, this is what you're supposed to do. And then we wouldn't do it. The new trainees wouldn't do it. And a lot of the teachers weren't actually doing it. And we weren't talking about what we weren't doing. And I over years of working with clients and leading yogi detoxes and leading people through these habits in different ways, I realized what was missing was that, like, these habits are now counterculture. They used to not be. When we didn't have electricity, these habits were natural. They were easier. But things have changed so fast. Anyone who's listening that wasn't brought up on computers, let alone tablets and phones, that it's hard to adapt, right? But those that were raised on it, actually, it's hard for them to know the old ways. So we're in this very, very, very interesting time, and we're running the biggest human experiment that's ever been run before on the planet in so many ways. But what we know at our core is that nature deficit disorder is real, and attention deficit disorder is rising. Right? So we know that the more time we have in nature, the more time we have to just simply align to the rhythms, align to the vibe, the healthier we get. So I came into Ayurveda and yoga from a dharma, from a lifelong purpose of helping humans become more conscious. It was sort of it started as a save the planet thing. It's still a bit of a save the planet thing, where it's like, if we become more conscious, we take better care of home. Our home is big. It's called a planet. And when I came into Ayurveda, it was like, I'm coming into Ayurveda from a background in international environmental politics and economics. And how do we help humans become more conscious? Because Ayurveda knows how to help people. It A, assumes consciousness, and it B, assumes that you can have more of it. You can be tapped more into it. And when you do, everything gets better. It also gets more intense because you have more power and you have more control over how you feel. So if you mess up, you feel that more. If you align, bigger things happen and you start to be invited to take on a bigger role in life. And that's, if we look at a guru, there's someone who's dense with energy, not with physicality. They're dense with energy. They're dense with power. So when I look at that generosity you're speaking with, I just had to break it down to like, hey, you know what you're supposed to do. Let's figure out how you can start to change, no matter where you're starting from. Let's just start with this first little tip. Let's just start moving in the right direction. From behavioral science, we know that 1% improvements over time leverage massive transformation.
That's what I liked so much about this book. And before I actually, before I chose to buy the rights for the Swedish version, I sent the manuscript to a friend of mine who's been kind of searching for a lifestyle change, not a diet, not, to follow a certain, way of eating or, not weight loss, just, she's been looking for a lifestyle challenge to follow, to start, with. And she just turned to me a few days later and said, I love this book. And I think it's because it's easy, but it's very informative and it gives you so much. So I'm really looking forward to send this book off to the shelves. But can you tell us a little bit about your motto in life? So you told us about, your dharma, the reason for doing all this. What is your motto in life?
We orient towards thrive. And this is one of our values in my community, in my global online community. And for those who want to hear more from me, you can listen to the Yoga Healer podcast. It's on all podcast channels. But one of the things that I realized in studying Ayurveda and yoga is that if we could just simplify it, if we could simplify it away from the rules. And a lot of people who don't like habits, like I don't like rules either. Like I said before, I'm a rebel. I'm a rule breaker. So let's just see, like, how do I align to rhythm? Right. So orienting towards thrive is like when something's challenging, and often there's many challenges right now that hit us before we even open our eyes in the morning. It's just to notice, like, if we orient towards the problem, we're overwhelmed and depressed and our immune system is suppressed. But if we orient towards thrive, we're orienting towards that there's a solution built in with the problem. We're oriented to becoming part of the solution. So now we're actually an active creator in what happens next. Yeah. And that to me is the biggest thing. My mission, which is a little different than my motto, is that we spread personal and planetary thrive. And that's the mission behind everything we do at Yoga Healer and Yoga Health Coaching, which is our wellness professional track.
I get very inspired by being oriented towards thrive because it's very allowing.
Yeah. And in any moment, even, as a parent or as right now, my parents are going through some harder things in their late 70s and 80s. If you can just remember that, like in any given moment that seems overwhelming or too hard, or the energy feels stuck, or we don't know what to do with it, you just exhale. And they're like, where's thrive? Yeah. Like, where's thrive pointing? Yeah. And you're tuning into that there's a natural intelligence that is you, that you have access to, and you're then taking the next step in your journey.
That sounds lovely. Cate, thank you so much for your time. It's been lovely talking to you. I think we have everything we need.
Oh, great. And I can't wait to come to Sweden and meet you all. So we're planning an event.
Hopefully.
Here I come. I can't wait to find out who you are.
Yeah.
Listeners, readers. We're going to sign books and everything.
Yes. The dirty books.
The dirty books, exactly. Yeah. Don't keep them clean for me. Use them. Okay, awesome, Alexandra. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.